Who are you, Lau, when there's no one left to see? Not the version you show your friends, not the smile you give to strangers, not even the careful words you choose at work. I mean you, the raw, unfiltered, unpolished self that breathes quietly in the background, the one that surfaces only in the silence of an empty room or in the mirror when your eyes are too tired to pretend. Carl Jung believed that every human being wears a mask, a persona, to navigate the world. This mask is not inherently false. It's the part of us designed to protect, to adapt, to belong. But behind it lives something far more complex, far more fragile, and infinitely more real. And sometimes when the mask grows too heavy, we forget what our own face actually looks like. Have you ever caught yourself acting in ways you didn't fully recognize? Laughing when you didn't find something funny, agreeing when you didn't mean to, staying silent when you desperately wanted to speak. We do this because the persona whispers that safety is better than truth. Approval is better than authenticity. But slowly this quiet compromise eats away at the soul. If you've ever faced that subtle ache, that sense of being slightly out of alignment with yourself, you are not alone. I'd love to hear your experiences. Have you ever looked at your own life and thought, this isn't really me? Share it in the comments below. Your story might help someone else realize they're not alone in feeling this way. Jung's idea of the persona came from a deep observation. Human beings are social creatures shaped not only by their own inner desires, but also by the demands of the society they live in. From childhood, we learn the rules, what makes us lovable, what earns approval, what invites rejection. The mask begins forming early. For some, it's a cheerful, agreeable face. For others, it's competence, strength, or charm. And the longer we wear it, the more it fuses with our identity. But there's a cost. The mask cannot show everything. It must hide what doesn't fit. And so our sadness, our anger, our wildness, our softness, these pieces get pushed into the shadows. Jung called this the shadow self, the collection of parts we reject or suppress. The shadow isn't evil. It's simply the truth we decided no one wanted to see. Imagine for a moment as a child you cried when you were hurt, but perhaps an adult told you, don't be weak, and so you learned to swallow tears. Or maybe you were praised only when you achieved something, so you learned to hide the parts of you that simply wanted to rest. These moments are not forgotten. They sink into the unconscious, shaping how you move through the world. Years later, the persona smiles, while the shadow waits quietly underneath. You go to a party and tell stories, but inside you feel disconnected. You say, I'm fine, when you're not. You play the role you've mastered, but when the curtain falls, you wonder if anyone has truly seen you at all. Jung didn't see the persona as a lie, it's a tool. We need it to function, to interact, to survive. But when the persona becomes the whole of our identity, the soul starts to hunger. That hunger often appears as restlessness, dissatisfaction, or the sense that life has lost its color. You might have a stable job, a full calendar, even love in your life. But something inside whispers, there's more. This more is not about possessions or status. It's about wholeness. Jung believed the journey toward wholeness begins when we turn inward, facing the parts of ourselves we've hidden for years. It's an act of courage to meet your shadow, to acknowledge the raw, unpolished truth of who you are. But in that meeting, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel real again. Perhaps you've already had glimpses of this. Maybe in the stillness of a late night you've felt a part of you rising, one that doesn't care about performance or approval. Or maybe, in a moment of deep connection, you've spoken words you didn't plan, words that came from a place older and truer than thought. These moments are the cracks in the mask, and through them, your authentic self breathes. But here's the paradox. We fear authenticity as much as we crave it. Why? Because to show our true self risks rejection. If we've learned that love is conditional, then revealing our raw edges feels dangerous. So we keep the mask on, convincing ourselves it's for the best. And yet, deep down, the self behind the mask grows impatient. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you think you should be, not who others expect you to be, but to strip away what is false and stand in the naked truth of your own being. This is not a comfortable process. It's a slow shedding, a peeling back of layers that have been in place for decades. Sometimes life helps us in unexpected ways, a crisis, a heartbreak, a loss. These moments are painful, but they also have the strange power to tear the mask from our face. Suddenly, the roles we've been playing no longer make sense. We stand in front of the mirror and see someone we barely recognize. This is the threshold Jung spoke of, the place where the old self begins to dissolve and the real self begins to emerge. If you've ever been there, you know it's both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying, because the familiar roles are gone. Liberating, because for the first time, you can breathe without holding yourself in place. This journey is what Jung called individuation, the process of integrating all parts of yourself into a whole. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming complete. To walk this path, you must meet not only the persona you've worn, but the shadow you've hidden, the inner child you've forgotten, and the dreams that have been quietly guiding you all along. As we move deeper into this exploration, remember, there's no rush. The self reveals itself in its own time, often in whispers, rarely in shouts, but once you begin to listen, you can never unhear the truth. And so, the journey inward begins, not with a map, but with a willingness to step into the unknown. There is no fixed path to the self, no straight line from mask to truth. Instead, it unfolds like a labyrinth, each turn revealing both familiar and forgotten parts of who you are. Some of these parts you will greet like old friends, others you might recoil from, uncertain whether you're ready to face them. Jung often spoke of dreams as the secret language of the unconscious. When the persona sleeps, the shadow stirs, painting stories in images, symbols, and strange events that rarely make sense on the surface. You might dream of being chased, of falling, of losing your voice, of wandering through an endless house with rooms you've never seen before. These dreams are not random. They are messages from the deeper layers of your psyche, offering you pieces of yourself that have been left behind. Have you ever had a dream that stayed with you for days, even years? One that felt more real than your waking life? Perhaps you dismissed it, thinking it was just a dream. But Jung believed that these moments are invitations, subtle calls to acknowledge what the conscious mind refuses to see. When you begin to treat your dreams not as meaningless fragments, but as living conversations with your inner world, something shifts. You start to see patterns, symbols repeat, emotions resurface. The unconscious begins to trust you with more of its secrets. But dreams are not the only doorway. Life itself has a way of delivering messages, sometimes as whispers, sometimes as storms. A sudden conflict at work that exposes your hidden anger. A stranger's comment that stings more than it should. An unexpected wave of sadness while driving home. These are not coincidences. Jung called them synchronicities when they appear as meaningful patterns, events that feel connected to your inner state. Think about a time when you were contemplating a difficult decision, and then, without warning, a conversation, a book, or a song seemed to speak directly to your situation. Or when you were wrestling with a question, and life offered an answer in a way too precise to be mere chance. These moments are easy to dismiss, but when you start paying attention, you notice how the outer world mirrors the inner one. This mirroring is essential to individuation. It reminds us that we are not separate from life, we are woven into it. The same way a dream can reveal hidden truths, so can the events of our daily existence. But to see it, you must be willing to slow down, to notice, to question. One of the most challenging steps on this path is meeting the inner child. This is not a metaphorical fantasy. It's the living memory of the person you once were before the persona took over. Your inner child remembers joy without reason, creativity without fear, and love without conditions. But it also remembers the wounds, times you were dismissed, shamed, or left alone with feelings too big to carry. For many, meeting the inner child is uncomfortable. It means revisiting old hurts, acknowledging the needs that were never met. You may feel anger toward those who couldn't give you what you needed. You may feel grief for the years you spent trying to be good instead of being yourself. But in that grief lies a gift, the chance to become the parent, the protector, the friend that your younger self never had. Imagine sitting with that younger version of you, no judgment, no rush, just presence. What would you say? What would they need to hear? Sometimes healing isn't about grand gestures, it's about small acts of listening to yourself in a way no one else ever did. But the shadow will not be ignored forever. The longer it's suppressed, the more it leaks into life in distorted ways, through sudden bursts of anger, jealousy, self-sabotage, or compulsive behaviors you can't explain. This is why shadow work is not about becoming better in the eyes of the world. It's about becoming whole. To look into the shadow is to admit that you are not only light, but also darkness, not only strength, but also vulnerability. Many resist this, thinking it will make them weak, but Jung knew the opposite was true. What you refuse to face has power over you. What you bring into awareness becomes integrated, balanced. A person who has met their shadow is less likely to be controlled by it. They no longer need to project it onto others, blaming, judging, or condemning, because they recognize those same traits within themselves. This recognition changes everything. Relationships become deeper, because you stop expecting others to carry the parts of yourself you won't acknowledge. Conflicts become less destructive, because you see your own role in them. Even loneliness changes. It becomes less about the absence of others and more about the presence of your own neglected self. Still, this work requires patience. The unconscious is vast and layered. You cannot force it to reveal everything at once. Doing so would be overwhelming. Instead, think of it as a long conversation, one where you show up consistently, ready to listen. Sometimes the message is clear, other times it arrives in fragments, symbols, and feelings you can't quite name. That's okay. Trust is built over time. There will be moments of resistance. Parts of you may want to turn back, to slip into the familiar comfort of the mask. That's normal. Growth is rarely linear. It moves in spirals, revisiting the same themes from deeper and deeper angles. Each return is not failure, but refinement, an opportunity to see with clearer eyes. And as you continue, you may notice something subtle. The mask you once wore so tightly begins to loosen. You no longer feel the same pressure to perform or please. Silence feels less like emptiness and more like space. Solitude becomes a companion rather than a punishment. You begin to realize that being alone doesn't mean being abandoned. It means being with yourself fully. If the first step was noticing the mask, and the second was meeting what lies beneath, then this stage is about learning to walk with all parts of yourself, not as enemies, but as allies. Jung saw individuation as the art of reconciliation. The persona, the shadow, the inner child, the conscious mind, the unconscious, they all have a place. When they work together, life gains a depth and richness that cannot be manufactured. And yet there's still further to go, because knowing yourself is only half the journey. The other half is living from that truth, bringing it into your relationships, your work, your choices. This is where the world meets the self, and where authenticity becomes not just an inner experience, but a way of being. Living from your truth is not a single dramatic leap. It is 1,000 quiet choices made over and over again. Some days, You will feel strong enough to speak with complete honesty. Other days, the old mask will find its way back onto your face. This is not failure. It is the nature of transformation. Jung understood that wholeness is not about erasing the past, but weaving it into the present in a way that gives it meaning. You will notice the shift first in small ways. Perhaps you decline an invitation not out of fear or avoidance, but because you genuinely need rest. Perhaps you speak a truth you once swallowed, and instead of the rejection you feared, you are met with understanding, or at least with your own self-respect. These moments build something within you, a quiet confidence that you can be who you are and still belong. But belonging changes meaning here. It is no longer about fitting into every room, every conversation, every expectation. It is about finding the places where your soul can exhale, where you are accepted without negotiation. And sometimes, that place is simply within yourself. As you live more authentically, relationships shift. Some will deepen, surprised and refreshed by the presence of your true self. Others will fall away, unable to accept the version of you that no longer plays the old roles. This, too, is part of the individuation process. Shedding the false inevitably changes the world around you. Jung warned that becoming yourself will often feel like losing yourself at first. When you step out of the roles you've always played, there is a space of not knowing, a liminal zone where the old has gone but the new has not yet arrived. It can feel like walking into a fog without a map, but this space is fertile. In its stillness, something essential begins to take root. If you can sit in that uncertainty without rushing to fill it, you will notice subtle guidance arising from within. It may come as an image, a sudden clarity, a sentence you can't stop thinking about, a dream that feels like a prophecy. The self communicates in ways that bypass logic. Your task is not to control it, but to listen. One of Jung's most radical ideas was that the unconscious is not merely a storage place for the unwanted. It is a source of wisdom far older and deeper than the conscious mind. Within it lives the collective unconscious, the shared human inheritance of symbols, archetypes, and stories that connect us across time and culture. When you encounter these archetypes, the mother, the hero, the trickster, the wise old man, you are meeting forces that live both in you and in the world. They show up in myths, in films, in dreams, in the roles we take on without even realizing it. Recognizing them gives you a new lens on your life. You begin to see how you have been cast in certain roles, and how you might choose to step out of them. For example, you might recognize the caretaker archetype in yourself, the one who tends to everyone else's needs at the expense of your own, or the seeker, always moving toward the next horizon, never pausing to rest. By seeing these patterns, you gain the freedom to decide whether they still serve you. You are no longer unconsciously acted upon by them. You become an active participant in your own story. And as your awareness expands, something else happens. You begin to see the masks of others. Not to judge them, but to understand that everyone is carrying their own balance of persona and shadow, their own hidden wounds and quiet strengths. Compassion deepens. The anger you once felt towards someone softens into curiosity. What pain might they be hiding? What mask are they afraid to take off? This is the paradox of individuation. The more you become yourself, the more connected you feel to others. Because authenticity recognizes authenticity, even if it is unspoken. Still, there will be days when the work feels heavy, days when the shadow is loud, when the old patterns pull you back, when the voice of doubt whispers that this is all too much. On those days, remember, transformation is not measured by the absence of struggle, but by the way you return to yourself after it. Give yourself permission to rest without abandoning the path. Speak gently to yourself as you would to that inner child you met along the way. Some of the deepest changes happen not in the moments of insight, but in the quiet, unseen acts of choosing yourself again and again. And so we arrive here, at a simple but profound truth. You are not only the mask you wear, you are not only the wounds you carry, you are the totality of your light and darkness, your past and present, your dreams and reality. Jung's work reminds us that wholeness is not about perfection, it is about integration. The next time you are alone, truly alone, try this. Close your eyes. Let the roles, the expectations, the voices of others fall away. Ask yourself quietly, who am I when no one is looking? Do not rush to answer. Let the silence speak back to you. You may be surprised by what you hear. And tonight, just before sleep, try one more thing. Ask yourself, what part of me am I still hiding? Then let your dreams answer. Pay attention to what they bring you, not as random images, but as gifts from the deepest parts of your being. Thank you for walking through this reflection with me. If these insights have resonated with you, I invite you to share your experience in the comments. Your story may be the mirror someone else needs. And if you wish to continue exploring the transformative wisdom of Carl Jung, subscribe and join this journey of becoming whole. Until next time, remember, the greatest act of courage is not to become someone else, but to finally become yourself.